Much of the data that was hacked and exfiltrated from sites like Equifax and others is for sale for pennies on the dollar on the dark web. Well, how do you find those forums? Until very recently, Reddit was a great referrer of nefarious traffic for Tech Republic and ZDNet. My name is Dan Patterson with Emily Wilson, Director of Analysis at Terbium Labs. Emily's job is to monitor the dark web. Emily, bring us inside. Help contextualize what was happening, not just on the dark web, but on Reddit that was sending so much traffic to dark web forums.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the dark web is that all of the activity, all of the kind of illicit trading and discussions take place in these kind of hidden corners of the internet that no one can access. But until very recently, about a month ago, a lot of discussions, whether for drugs or for fraud or for market launches or market drama, was taking place on Reddit. Reddit was hosting a variety of subreddits that were used for general market discussion. Some of these major dark web markets had official subreddits, and there were unofficial spin-offs. And a lot of the PR work, yes, dark web markets do PR work. A lot of the PR work, the customer service, all of that was taking place on Reddit. And then at the end of March, Reddit stepped in and said, hey, you know what, we're going to update and enforce our terms of service. Reddit cannot be used as a place to facilitate the trade of illicit goods. And as a result, they shut down not only the major market subreddits, but the drug subreddits, fraud, forgery, even the sex worker subreddits are all shut down. And in reaction, people needed a place to go. So an enterprising user who one might say had a great deal of foresight, or maybe in some more conspiracy theory-minded groups, a tip-off, had created a separate site, a new Reddit. This one hosted on a Tor hidden service called Dread, which is a great name, I will say. And Dread saw a huge increase in traffic. It went from 2,000 or so registered users to over 12,000 until yesterday morning, where on the dark web, everything goes to hell in 2 minutes. And there's been some drama over the last 24 hours.
So Reddit had a reputation for being kind of the Wild West. They long ago shut down many of the child pornography and human trafficking subreddits, many of the things that we find very distasteful, if not downright illegal. What took them so long to shut down these particular forums?
Sure, and I think that distinction is important too, as part of the things people typically will misunderstand about the dark web, is that a lot of these communities, these fraud communities, these drug communities, everyone operates very separately from child exploitation. The communities really hate each other, and they're held separately. In terms of why all of this was up for so long, it's an ongoing topic of conversation. Reddit could very easily have shut this down. People were operating quite openly. And Reddit was an immense source of information, a lot of institutional knowledge building, which is good for law enforcement, good for security researchers like myself, but also good for the community in a couple of really practical ways. One, it was a source of market updates, so new markets launching new official links. It was a source of harm reduction, people who are looking to come off of certain drugs or reduce dependency. And also a place for vendors to communicate, especially when vendors are vending across multiple markets. We saw a drug vendor a few weeks ago, well, more than a month ago now, actually, I guess time flies, come out and say, hey, my latest batch was misdosed. You may be getting pills that range in these range of doses, so please be careful, and I can issue a refund, but heads up, everybody, which in this case can save lives.
You mentioned a moment ago law enforcement. For businesses, and particularly businesses who've had their data and intellectual property exfiltrated and sold on the dark web, how do they collaborate with law enforcement? And do businesses ever take it into their own hands to track down users on the dark web?
Sure. So tracking down users is definitely a messy and complicated process, right? That's why there are whole industries devoted to tracking actors and trying to figure out who's behind these. And unmasking actors typically requires a lot of law enforcement activity. Where law enforcement can step in and where Reddit and other sites like Reddit can be hit or miss is on takedown requests, right? So these are requests that can come either from a business, or it can come from a third party, a security firm representing a business, for example, or a law firm, or law enforcement stepping in to say, hey, this page, this forum, this whatever it is you're hosting is stolen data, or is defamation of some kind, and you need to pull it down. So they can partner with law enforcement in that way. And I think also just law enforcement is in these communities, right? Law enforcement and security researchers are known to be in these communities. And so law enforcement is tracking activity as things are unfolding.
What's happening on Reddit after these subreddits were shut down? You mentioned the community moved on and went to dark web forums, but certainly many of those members were also Reddit community members. Do they continue to act in a similar way on Reddit, or is behavior also muted?
Behavior is definitely, it's shifting. There were a couple of subreddits that are loosely tied to the dark web that were kept up, but they were sent a sort of warning notice. Make sure you don't talk about trade. Make sure you're limiting this to security discussions or procedural topics. So users are being careful, and users are typically stepping in to promote, whether it's the Dread forum that I mentioned or some of these other market forums. People are stepping in to say, hey, let's be careful. Reddit didn't go out of its way to shut down too many user accounts. They went after a few very popular players who've now reestablished new accounts, as you do. But by and large, people are aware that this is a problem and that they need to be careful because law enforcement is paying attention. Particularly, we've seen the Justice Department come out over the last 6 or 9 months issuing statements about their intent to go after the dark web drug communities. People are seeing that happen now, and they know they need to be careful.
So what does this portend for the future of not just Reddit, but for the dark web and for hackers or traders of exfiltrated data?
Yeah, so I think the most important lesson that we've seen from this with Reddit, and also just over the past few years, the dark web is incredibly unstable and it changes very quickly. It's a very volatile community, but it really is, there's no better analogy than cutting off the head of a hydra, right? Not only will one more pop up in its place, probably 5 or 6 more. There are always places willing to step in and absorb the traffic. It may take the community a few weeks, up to a couple of months to resettle and reestablish a new home base, but it happens. This is the internet. People are very adaptable and they're used to being disrupted.